A War of Whispers, a game of politics and intrigue set in a fantasy world where there are 5 empires at war. But we're not them. We're not those empires. We take on the role of secret societies manipulating those empires. And basically, this is a betting game. You're betting on which empire will control the most cities at the end of the game. The way you project your agency on the board is by worker placement. So that's an interesting mechanic that we all love. And also, so the idea is that here you have a, a Game of Thrones, the board game kind of experience, but one that you don't need 5-6 hours to play. The game plays in about an hour, and my experience is that after people play it, they immediately want to play it again because it's very good. It's very engaging. I've seen pictures of deluxe versions of the game out there. I have the basic version, and I'm okay with that. I'm a simple man. I like breakfast food. I like wooden cubes, so I'm happy. So, the one complaint, however, that I have about the production, especially the board, is that here you have different empires. This is the horse and this is the lion, as identified by borders of different colors. And I wish they hadn't placed brown and yellow so close to each other because the contrast is not great. Very small complaint there. So we have these empires, again, as identified by the colors of the borders. So this one belongs to the wolf, that one belongs to the eagle. And an empire controls an area with the border of its own color unless there are enemy pieces in it. So you do not have to have game pieces in an area to control it if it is your own color. Right now the horses control this and this and this and this and that. As you can see, actually the horse starts with no game pieces on the board. These wooden cubes represent banners that are the fighting forces. However, if there is a banner in an area, then the empire controlling the banner always controls that area. And so right now that would be the lion controls all of those plus these two. If this is removed, then control automatically reverts to the empire that has that color. Other things that you see on the map, these weird ovals here, these brown ovals represent cities, and this is what we are fighting for. At the end of the game, victory points are based entirely on control of cities, nothing else. Towers, they have an effect when it comes to battles because they give an advantage to whoever is defending in an area with a tower. And then we have those farms or villages, those little symbols there. And usually at the end of an empire's phase, you can only have 4 cubes of that empire in an area. If there are more, they need to be removed until it's down to 4, unless they're in an area with that village or farm, and in which case the supply limit is 6. Now, each empire also has a deck of cards that you will acquire during the game and you will use to generate really cool effects. So, for example, the horse has that deck of cards that we place there next to their empire. The lion, we place it there, and so on and so forth. Now, these cards are peculiar in that each card has 3 effects, and each card of an empire, the first 2 effects are all the same. So all cards of the horses, they all have the same effects for the top and middle effect. As you can check, you can pause, you can read. I'm not messing with you. Only the bottom effect of these cards are different. Also, you see these symbols here. To play an effect of a card, you need to pay the corresponding number of symbols, and a card can pay for itself. And there's a little bit of a convoluted way of explaining that. To play this effect on this card, all I need to do is to discard this card, and I trigger this effect because this symbol pays for that one. If I want to activate that effect, then I play this card, and I also discard this one, so I discard 2 symbols like that to activate that one. Other effects do require a combination of cards from different decks to produce the corresponding effects. And these effects can be quite powerful. So, also, you meaning, oh, I talked about the empires, but remember, you are not the empires. You are a secret society. And like this one, each player has a display such as this one, and you take these 5 tokens representing the empires, you shuffle them, and you place them randomly here at the beginning of the game. Then each player can look at their own, and they better not show these to other players. And that's it. The end. That's it for the important thing of what will score points at the end of the game. The multiplier here is applied to the number of cities that this party will control. So the supplicant spider, if this is the situation at the end of the game, will score points in this category for the number of cities that the elephant controls times 4, and points for number of cities that the wolf controls times 3, and so on and so forth. This one is going to be a 0, so it's irrelevant. And you even have a negative one, so you really want the eagle to do poorly, because they control, say, 3 cities at the end of the game. That loses me 3 victory points. And that's all the scores. Number of cities as multiplied by how much you're supporting that party. Now, as we said, this is a worker placement game. It lasts 4 rounds, and to play each round, we go around the board, quite literally. The edge of the board creates a play array that reminds you what different things are. A round starts at start, hence the name, and the initial phase of the game is where you deploy your agents. Now, the first turn, each player simply deploys 2 agents, and you deploy them in these boxes here, the different councils of the empire. So, for example, I do that, and then another player does that, and then another player does that, for example. And then it's back to me, and I decide to place one here, and so on and so forth. The first round, you place 2 of your agents. Starting with the second round, each time that we place agents, we collect 1 and put down 2. So the total will be that at the end of the second round, you'll have 3 in play, then 4, then 5. And there's an interesting idea there, because, I was occupying that place, but since everybody takes 1, before everybody gets to place 1, and then everybody gets to place the second, then maybe somebody else now will take the spot that I just freed. So, put 2 down in round 1, retrieve 1 and put 2 down in round 2, 3, and 4. And again, this is done one at a time. Everybody collects 1, everybody places 1, everybody puts down a second one. And then we go around the board. And we resolve the actions. So we resolve that action, and then we go there and we resolve that other action, and so on and so forth. The interesting mechanic is this, that you, of course, control the spot and therefore the action where you have your own token. So right now, the pale raven controls that action. They get to resolve that action. Let's put this one there. When there's an empty spot, it is controlled by the next person going clockwise. So right now, that party, the Cult of the Rat, controls that spot and that spot. And no one controls that one. So the idea is that early on, when we're placing our agents, if I place it there, my agent there, and no one places anybody in that council, it's pretty good because I get all of these actions. But of course, then the raven becomes annoying about it. And now the raven controls those 3 actions, and I still get that action there. So that's the general idea of how you determine who controls a spot, which again may be nobody if there is a spot to the right of a token and no one in that direction clockwise within that council. The councils are sealed, so having somebody down the line on another council doesn't help you take control of that space. As when it comes to resolving the actions, the iconese that we need to learn, and it's pretty simple. It's one of the most intuitive actually uses of what I call iconese, the language of the icons that I've seen in gaming in a while. Because this symbol here means the banners, which are the cubes that we use as fighting forces on the board. So, for example, this action lets you place cubes of this of this faction, which is the blue, 1 cube for each farm that they control. And this one lets you, the sword lets you perform an attack. We'll talk about those. This one, this symbol means a card, which means you get to draw a card for each 2 farms that they control. Here it means they get to place 2 banners. You get to place a banner for each tower that they control. They get an attack. They get another attack there. They like to attack a lot. This symbol is the switcheroo, which means if you control that action, and if you choose to use that action, because basically you get one of the actions printed under a space that you control. If you choose to use the switcheroo action, you place that one somewhere in the council, switching their position with them, and immediately take the action where you landed. And again, basically these actions are place banners on the board, and how many depends on what triggers it, if it's number of towers or a fixed amount, or draw cards, or switch, or attack. So in truth, again, the Iconese is easy to read because there aren't so many effects based on it. The attack action, remember the little sword? The attack action lets you move a number of cubes from an area into an area you do not control. It has to be an attack in that sense. You cannot use to redeploy units within areas that you control. But this will be a valid attack. It's super simple. If you attack in an area that has a tower, one of the attacking banners is destroyed on the way there. After that, they fight and they remove each other's cubes at the rate of 1 for 1. And that's it. After that, you determine who controls the area, which will be who has cubes in there, if there are still cubes, or if there are no cubes anymore, which is totally possible, then the printed color determines who controls the area. Right now, that is how you control the area. So, as simple as that, you place your workers, you use your cards. Again, there are powerful effects, and those are triggered whenever the text applies, which may be in different phases, when you attack, when you defend, when you move, when you reinforce, blah, blah, blah. Play your agents, resolve their effects, and after 4 rounds, you count how many cities each empire controls. One important thing, because again we are not married to those empires, is that you may want at some point to switch your allegiances at the end of a turn. At the end of a round, players can choose to reveal 2 of their tokens and switch them. Once they are switched, they cannot move anymore and they are revealed for the rest of the game. So basically, you could do this up to twice per game by switching 4. So it's a pretty big commitment because then everybody knows where loyalties are, and that really changes, the strategy in the last couple of turns, because it's unlikely that people will do this in round 1 or 2. This is more likely something you'll see in round 3. But it's an option, because otherwise we wouldn't be the kind of cutthroat in secret societies that we are. Anyway, this is how you play, in general, an overview of War of Whispers. This is a really good game. It's really fun. Everybody played it with, enjoyed it. Everybody wanted to play it again. And maybe also because it really takes a game for you to really get a feel for the flow, to really understand the map, where you can go from where, who can threaten whom, and how many actions it takes to do this or to do that. And most importantly, it takes usually a game to really get to appreciate how powerful the cards are. That is an element that people are likely to disregard a little bit the first time that they play, because, oh my gosh, it takes so many actions, so much planning to create that combo 2 cards. Then you realize, oh, this, especially played later on, can be pretty powerful, can change the whole scenario of the battlefield. And so again, the game is simple, the mechanics are simple, the implementation will take a little bit to get used to, but the game plays and flows very, very smoothly. And again, you have a game of intrigue and politics and betrayal and backstabbing that plays in about an hour, and it does that is realistic. That's remarkable. That is not something that you see every day. Usually takes a lot more complexity in terms of rules to create this kind of complexity in terms of gameplay. Now, because of the short length, sometimes you feel like, oh my gosh, I wish I had an extra round, an extra action. But again, the beauty is that then you can set up the game again and play it again and try differently. However, because of the short length, although the scheming, the trying to read the opponent, those are very important and they're still fun, they're not going to be super elaborate or super complicated, simply because the action economy is too tight. I can't afford to attack an empire that I'm supporting just to trick my opponents into believing that they will not, I'm not teaching that empire. And then I turn around. I cannot attack maybe once, but not twice, because I just don't have enough actions to waste into not pursuing my objectives directly. And so there are times in which, in truth, the objectives of the players are fairly clear from early on. But then can still be some ambiguity, because I know you're not that interested in that empire, but then maybe -1 or 0 or ×2 for you, and that is still different. Another important element that is really important is to jump on the right side of the fence at the right time, to jump on the card of the winner, because those switches that you have later in the game, again, they can really affect the game significantly. And if you do it at the right time, in the right way, that may deliver victory to you, which feels fair, which feels like as it should be in a game which is precisely about manipulating and not so much about committing to the wealth and power of this or that empire. If anything, I saw people getting so in love with a certain empire that is in the ×4 part of their display, and they really almost identify with that when they're playing like they're that empire, and they're not necessarily going to do as well as somebody who's going to betray an empire and then switch allegiances to the last minute and win. So I would say the diplomatic and scheming element is definitely there and does give flavor to gameplay, but in a way that is not so much about I'm scheming to have this empire win at all costs. It's more about I'm scheming to find the right balance and figuring out when is the right time to back this or that empire. And that's cool. That's pretty nice. Worker placement, one of the most successful game mechanics of the last 20 years, and it's a great game mechanic. Well, almost everywhere that I've seen it, it's one that I like very much. And it works very well here, the idea of sending the agents out to different councils. The idea of a worker placement, of course, is that when you place an action, when you select an action, it will affect which actions are available later. And it works very well here because it gives you a whole other layer of decisions, especially early on when there aren't many agents on the board. You really want to try to take control of a lot of actions at the same time. But it's risky because somebody else then may just place their token right in front of you. So instead of 4 actions, now you have only 1 available. And maybe it's not so good. Or should you go for an action that is resolved early in the council and maybe only get that action, maybe 2 actions, but they are the ones that you want. So very interesting decisions that emerge there, very interactive because I'm really trying to think where the opponent wants to go and what actions they're likely to take. So the mind game is very strong and really fun, and I guess it's pretty impressive how much of that you have for a game that is ultimately so simple and plays so quickly and so smoothly, so intuitively. One thing that in the long run, I wonder how that will work is that some of those card effects are indeed pretty powerful. And if you play one of those effects early on, suppose you have it, well, then another game effects will later take that back. So as players become proficient and they realize how powerful those effects are, a little more chaos may be added to the last turn when people start playing those massive effects that will allow you to teleport from one side to the other, to take control of 3 cities at the same time, and play that kind of stuff. And players will want to do that at the end, of course. And so you may have a feel that a game that is really tight in terms of actions, it really is about planning, becomes a little more out of control in the last round. Personally, I am a trained war gamer. I don't mind that too much. I don't mind a degree of randomness when it comes to games about conflict, because that's the way conflict works. So we have the idea of fog of war, we have the idea of unpredictability, war being a game of cards in real life. And so it's okay if then the cards take control of things a little bit towards the end. So that's not a problem for me. But it's something I want to point out, that it feels like with proficient players that have realized what the cards can do, the last round you're going to see a lot of card play, and that just changes the flavor in ways that maybe they will work for you too, or maybe they won't. That's for you to make that assessment. What I can tell you is that I personally really enjoy A War of Whispers. All of my gaming friends I played it with enjoyed it also. I think it's a great game. It combines interesting ideas with a very successful worker mechanic implementation. So to me, this is a really fun, really, really good game.